The massive success that Spider-Man Brand New Day has meant for Marvel is worth mentioning, and while it comes as no surprise to anyone that our friendly neighborhood hero has always been one of the most popular and beloved characters among the general public, it's interesting that even though they knew his next movie would be a guaranteed hit, Marvel still gave us a film that is more than enjoyable and worthy of ranking among the web-slingers' best. But is it the best movie in the franchise? Is it superior to Sam Raimi's saga with the highly acclaimed Spider-Man 2? In this video, we'll analyze what makes this latest installment so great, comparing it to its predecessors and looking at the evolution of Tom Holland's Peter Parker, from his flawed but promising start through his curious trip to Europe to once again breaking down everything good and bad about the movie that brought the three Spider-Men together. Is Brand New Day really as good as audiences and critics claim? First, and most obviously, this latest Spider-Man film is truly outstanding, especially when looking back at his first three movies under Disney. Homecoming was a great start, but it wasn't perfect. It faced constant criticism that Spider-Man felt too tied to Iron Man, essentially replacing the profound lessons we were so used to getting from Uncle Ben. Even though Tony Stark is a fan-favorite character, his role as Peter Parker's mentor didn't quite click with everyone. In fact, the film's highest point comes when Peter learns that Spider-Man is more than just an advanced tech suit, and that his true strength lies in his noble spirit and his drive to help those who need it most. It's a great lesson, but unfortunately, we don't see it developed further in the sequel, Far From Home. Here, Peter goes right back to representing Tony Stark's legacy, only this time following Tony's death in Endgame, carrying the weight of living up to his mentor and facing off against a villain who is dangerous more for his cunning than his raw power. This second installment has some huge wins, but also major flaws. It often ranks as the least favorite of Tom Holland's saga, though it's still enjoyable and packs some truly memorable moments. Then there's the highest grossing Spider-Man movie to date, No Way Home. This was a global event that will go down in history forever, breaking box office records and sparking a massive new wave of interest in superhero cinema. Who could forget all the theories and speculation about Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire returning? Of course, we now know those rumors were completely true, ultimately becoming the worst kept secret in the movie's history. Even so, and unfortunately for many, once the hype and the element of surprise faded, people who rewatched the film hoping to feel that same excitement woke up to a harsh reality. As a standalone film, it's really not all that great. It's far from being the worst Spider-Man movie, but it still has a ton of flaws and an inconsistent pace that makes it hard to stay fully engaged. This is exactly where Brand New Day takes the lead. It presents a conflict centered entirely on Spider-Man himself, rather than relying on supporting characters who end up feeling more important than the protagonist. The plot zeroes in on his personal struggles, coping with the fact that his friends and the rest of the world have forgotten him, dealing with the absence of Aunt May, and convincing himself that staying completely isolated is the only way to keep his loved ones safe. This triggers a deep internal conflict. As he tries to suppress the Peter Parker side of his life, his spider side begins to take over. We see his eyes turn completely pitch black. He experiences sudden fits of rage, his strength increases exponentially, and, most notably, he actually starts producing organic webbing, just like Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man. All of this is more than enough to carry an entertaining and surprise-filled plot. Still, Brand New Day brings even more to the table with supporting characters that perfectly complement Peter's personality. We get to see his contrasting perspective on how to resolve conflicts compared to the Punisher, and we explore how closely his current mutation parallels Bruce Banner's situation. On top of that, it reminds us of something we sometimes forget about Peter. He's incredibly brilliant. It makes total sense for him to hold his own in a high-level conversation to develop a technological solution for the plot, and it never feels forced. Additionally, throwing Jean Grey into the mix as the antagonist is a fascinating choice. She's portrayed differently than what we're used to in the X-Men films. Her powers are more limited here, which makes it believable that Spider-Man could actually take her down. It also doesn't force unnecessary ties to the X-Men universe. She simply functions as a great antagonist who works perfectly on her own terms. Does this mean the movie is perfect? Not at all, and it doesn't need to be, since perfection is highly subjective subjective depending on your perspective. For example, the romantic tension between MJ and Peter might make many feel like it's just spinning its wheels without really going anywhere, occasionally feeling like a waste of time. Meanwhile, the final payoff, where Peter remembers that Ned was his friend too, feels a little jarring. His obsession with his ex-girlfriend essentially pushed his former best friend to the background, only for the finale to declare that the power of friendship is stronger than the power of love. Die-hard Marvel fans might take offense at the massive nerf Jean Grey gets compared to her other iterations, while others might complain that the true villain was something you could see coming from a mile away. And you know what? All of these complaints are completely valid, because even without being the greatest movie in the world, there's no denying that this installment is incredibly enjoyable. It's the highly anticipated chapter where we finally see Tom Holland Spider-Man figure things out entirely on his own. He isn't anyone's disciple or successor, he's making his own decisions and facing his own consequences. Even so, there's a very important question we have to consider. Is Brand New Day better than Sam Raimi's beloved trilogy? Is it superior to the highly acclaimed and rightfully iconic Spider-Man 2? It's hard to compete against the best of the best. While the sequel in Tobey Maguire's saga certainly has its fair share of mistakes, it's impossible to deny that its triumphs far overshadow everything else. It features arguably the greatest and most fleshed out villain, with Dr. Octopus being so memorable that he even made a comeback many years later. But it goes much deeper than that, because when we analyze both films based on Peter and Spider-Man's core conflicts, Brand New Day still falls short. Let's look at the different situations these two Peter Parkers find themselves in. While Tom's version is a brilliant kid armed with highly advanced tech that lets him maximize his intellect, Tobey's version can't afford those luxuries. He constantly struggles with financial issues, juggling part-time gigs at the Daily Bugle and working as a pizza delivery guy. We see him try to put on his best face through all of this, using the Spider-Man mask as a refuge to try and forget his miseries. On the flip side, we don't really see Tom suffer anything similar, as he doesn't even seem to have a real job. This is a stark contrast to the premise we were sold at the end of No Way Home, a Peter completely alone in New York City, having to start from rock bottom, hand sewing a rudimentary suit, and scraping by in a new city, and a reality where he has absolutely no one to lean on. But unfortunately, Brand New Day skips over all of this character development, jumping several years ahead to a point where Peter is much more stable. At least in his role as Spider-Man, he's recognized and celebrated by the entire city as their hero. We see something similar with Tobey, but under vastly different circumstances. For Tobey, being Spider-Man means being hated by his best friend, despised by his boss, and criticized by a ton of people who think he's doing things wrong or could do them better, completely ignoring all the sacrifices he's made to become the city's best hero. Interestingly enough, the core conflict in both of these movies is actually the exact same, just approached from completely opposite points of view. For Tom Holland, being Peter Parker and having no one remember him is a torment, and he seeks refuge from it by being Spider-Man most of the time. This is the very reason his body mutates to become more spider than man. On Tobey's end, the heavy burdens of his life as both Spider-Man and Peter Parker make his subconscious feel that one of them has to be pushed aside. Since he can't be Spider-Man 100% of the time, his own biology blocks his abilities, so he has to focus on his human version. He takes this opportunity to improve his life outside of being a superhero, proving that Peter Parker alone can achieve whatever he sets his mind to. Unfortunately, Uncle Ben's lessons and his own innate instinct to help those in need make him realize that he can never truly abandon Spider-Man, no matter how much he might want to. He has to sacrifice the hard-earned happiness he finally achieved for a greater good, because Spider-Man represents more than just a superhero. He represents hope for so many people, and knowing that he will always be out there to protect and help them brings peace to their lives. This is how both films arrive at the exact same conclusion. Even if the two sides can't perfectly coexist, Peter and Spider-Man are two sides of the same coin. They need each other, despite the fact that they might cause endless problems for one another. And this is exactly what Brand New Day understood perfectly. It delivers the message that he can't just be Spider-Man entirely and cast Peter aside, because Spider-Man can't abandon his friends, and Peter can never ignore someone who needs help. Because of all this latest film positions itself as one of the wall crawler's best movies, and in my own personal opinion, the absolute best Spider-Man movie in recent years. So if you haven't seen it yet, go give it a chance. I guarantee you won't regret it.